Last night, I get home from my long day in Washington, D.C., and I flip on CNN because everybody on Twitter is talking about this town hall. Now, I knew that this town hall was going to go wildly wrong from the start because CNN has an agenda here. And I know they were claiming that it's just students who are asking questions, but people at CNN are journalists. They know what a loaded question sounds like, right? A loaded question is, when did you stop beating your wife, Senator? That's a loaded question. That was the entirety of the town hall last night. So the people who were there, it was senators from Florida. So it was Senator Marco Rubio and the Democratic senator from Florida, whose name is Bill Nelson. So he's been the senator there since 2001. They were both there. Dana Lash from the NRA showed up as well. And this turned into basically a hootenanny. It was a bunch of people in the crowd, hundreds of people in the crowd from the Broward County area. And then number one, important to note, Broward County, Democratic area, very left area, voted for Hillary Clinton in a state that went red for Donald Trump. They voted, I think it was 54-46 for Hillary Clinton in that area. And this area of Broward County is apparently pretty left. The sheriff there, a guy named Steve Israel, has been photographed with Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. So it's a Democrat area. So the shooting took place in a Democrat area, and the people there were family and friends of victims. So what you are likely to get when you set this up is obviously emotions running incredibly high, and also an agenda that is obviously very clear. And this thing turned into a debacle right from the start, with people asking questions that were utterly inappropriate on a moral level. Okay, just because you've suffered something doesn't mean that you get to say immoral things. There were kids there who were saying some of the most immoral things truly immoral things. So, for example, let's do clip 28. So this is Cameron Kasky. He's one of the students who's been most featured on CNN because obviously they're not going to feature a bunch of students who are right-wing. That wouldn't be a thing. Instead, they're going to feature students who are left-wing. So Cameron Kasky asks Rubio a question, and in the process of the question, he says something that is so deeply immoral, it's shocking and it should be gut-churning to you.
Senator Rubio, it's hard to look at you and not look down the barrel of an AR-15 and not look at Nicholas Cruz. But the point is, you're here, and there are some people who are not.
Okay, that right there, it's hard not to look at you and be looking down the barrel of the shooter's gun. I understand you just went through something. I understand what you went through was difficult and terrible and horrible, and no person should have to go through that. I get all of that. That statement is deeply immoral. That is a disgusting statement. Marco Rubio didn't shoot anybody. Marco Rubio did not walk into a school and mow down children. And Marco Rubio's agenda is not to facilitate the mowing down of children. But again, the left's suggestion here is that everyone who is not on their side must be acting in bad faith. The only people acting in bad faith are the people who say stuff like that. Those are the only people who are acting in bad faith. I mean, the entire night was just an evening of grandstanding by political officials and an evening of throwing around the most immoral, morally charged language by some of the students. And listen, your obligation to be a moral human being and say moral things does not stop when you experience tragedy. To suggest that Marco Rubio is akin to a school shooter is disgusting. It's disgusting. Okay, and I'm not saying that the kid is disgusting. I'm saying that statement is disgusting because the statement is disgusting. And again, bad statements, immoral statements, they don't become less immoral just because you experience some pain. And I know that people on the left agree with me, because if there was a bombing victim or a family of a bombing victim or a witness to a bombing who said, let's throw every Muslim in the United States out of the country, the left would say that's an immoral statement. And they'd be right. That is an immoral statement. It is an immoral statement to also say that a sitting senator in the United States wants children to die simply so they can get whatever it is, $9,000 that Rubio got from the National Rifle Association. Okay, that CNN special last night was designed to do one thing, and that was to drive a moral wedge between fellow Americans. Truly, truly despicable. Okay, that was not the limit of it, of course. The Broward County Sheriff, Steve Israel, was there as well, and he was there in his full-scale Democratic capacity. So let's do a quick flashback. This sheriff, whose department missed 39 separate warnings on this kid. Okay, the shooter, the department was visiting this shooter's home 6 to 7 times a year for years. Okay, and they still didn't have enough authority, supposedly, to put this kid away, to get to take guns away from this person. I mean, the sheriff's office missed it. They blew it. But what is the sheriff blaming it on? Well, of course, he's going to blame it on guns. So here's a flashback. Here's Steve Israel. This is just last week, standing with Rick Scott, the governor of the state of Florida, and pushing gun control in front of Rick Scott.
If you're an elected official and you want to keep things the way they are and not do things differently, if you want to keep the gun laws as they are now, you will not get reelected in Broward County.
Right, so that guy right there is obviously a political actor with a political agenda, but he was portrayed on CNN as just a sheriff, right? Just a law enforcement official. Okay, the guy's a Democrat, obviously, and he has an agenda, pretty obviously. Nowhere was that clearer than when Dana Lash over at the NRA, who was there, asked the sheriff, okay, so why didn't you stop it? Right, you're the law enforcement body. You were warned. What did you do about it? And the media's response to Dana was, how dare Dana Lash ask Steve Israel something like that? It's one thing to blame Marco Rubio for the shooting. It's another to blame the actual sheriff who's responsible for maintaining the safety and security of the students of Broward County. It's another to say that he blew it. You know, it's one thing to blame gun owners like me all the way across the country in Los Angeles. But to blame, you know, to cast any weary eye upon the sheriff who's responsible for security, how dare Dana Lash? This is clip 31. Again, look at the crowd's response to Dana asking a very solid question here.
We need the power to take every firearm they have away from them and bring them to a mental health facility.
39 visits did not meet that standard? 39 visits, assaulting students, assaulting parents, taking bullets and knives to school. Did that not meet that standard?
Well, which are you speaking about specifically? You seem to know about all 39.
Well, I know there's one Florida statute where if he's sending messages threatening, if he's sending messages threatening to kill people, that right there, under Florida state law.
Who did he send the message to kill people to?
BuzzFeed, AP, Reuters, Yahoo News, all reported that was to other students.
Who was the victim?
It was sent to other students.
Dana, Reuters can't be a victim. The only person who could be a victim is an individual.
This, Sheriff, is what
so
I'm
if an
saying.
individual was threatened and it was real, that's a crime. But if he's posting things...
They were threatened with death. They were threatened that they were going to bleed. They were threatened that they were going to be killed.
Well, what's your specific case?
And he had already taken bullets and knives to school. He had already assaulted people. He assaulted his parent. He assaulted other students. 39 visits. And this was known to the intelligence and law enforcement community. Now, I'm not saying that you can be everywhere at once, but this is what I'm talking about. We have to follow up on these red flags.
You're not the litmus test.
Doesn't that meet the standard?
Absolutely.
Okay, and of course the crowd starts turning on Dana for mentioning the fact that when you visit a home 39 times and the guy goes shoots up a school, maybe you missed something. Right? How many red flags do you have to have? Okay, that seems like a better question to me than Marco Rubio, you're obviously Satan. What are you doing here? Why are you Satan? Why are you Satan? And all of this, of course, was forwarded and nodded on by CNN. I mean, listen to Emma Gonzalez. Emma Gonzalez is another one of the students who's been featured on CNN a lot. You can always tell which are the students who are pro-gun control because those are the ones whose faces you actually recognize. So when you look at Emma Gonzalez, you'll recognize her face because you saw it on CNN a lot. When you see some of the other students who were not at the CNN town hall for reasons that we will discuss in a second, then what you will see is that you don't recognize their faces because they're not on CNN a lot. So here's Emma Gonzalez, who actually says straight out to Dana Lash that she's going to support Dana Lash's kids better than Dana Lash's.
Dana Loesch, I want you to know that we will support your two children in the way that you will not. The shooter at our school obtained weapons that he used on us legally. Do you believe that it should be harder to obtain these semi-automatic and weapons and the modifications for these weapons to make them fully automatic like bump stocks?
Well, first off, Emma, I want to applaud you for standing up and speaking out. And for anyone who has ever criticized you or any of these students up here, including people who have been on my side of this issue.
Okay, so good for Dana for not taking the bait there. But again, what a horrifying statement. I'm going to defend your children a way you won't. I'd like to see Emma Gonzalez name Dana Lash's kids. She doesn't know Dana's kids. Again, the implication is that Dana must not care about children because Dana doesn't agree with Emma Gonzalez on this issue. It got worse than that. An audience member actually called Dana Lash a murderer in the middle of this special. Nobody says a word. It's just incredible. This is clip 24.
Do you know that it is not federally required for states to actually report people who are prohibited possessors, crazy people, people who are murderers? No? We've been actually talking about that for a long time. Let me answer the question. You can shout me down when I'm finished, but let me answer Emma's question.
Okay, and you can actually hear in the background audience members shouting at Dana that she's a murderer. If you believe that Marco Rubio is the murderer, if you believe that Dana Lash is the murderer, but if you don't believe that the shooter is responsible for his own actions, and if you believe that 300 million people in the United States have to have their gun rights removed from them instead of us focusing on how to fix this issue, if you think we're all that unsympathetic, then I would suggest you have a screw loose. You actually do have a problem. Your morality is skewed beyond belief if you think Dana Lash is a murderer or Marco Rubio is equivalent to the man who shot children in the face at a Parkland high school. Just repulsive. It got even worse than that. That wasn't even the extent of it. So we will discuss the rest of that in just 1 second. So let's start with some of the questions that were asked of Senator Rubio. So Senator Rubio, again, he is not the best advocate for the Second Amendment. He's the senator from Florida, which is why he was there. But Senator Rubio has a bad habit of trying to please the crowd that is in front of him. And so during the course of this debate, he kind of moved on a bunch of issues regarding raising the age of buying weapons, as well as the availability of AR-15s and all the rest of this. The questions that were being asked were truly amazing. So this is clip 12. You're going to see the father of one of the murdered students trying to push Rubio to say that guns were the sole reason for the shooting, and Rubio won't go there, and the crowd starts booing him, which again demonstrates the silliness of this. It is true, by the way, that guns were a factor here because the gun was used. Just as in any murder, the murder weapon is a factor. But does that mean it is the sole factor? Of course not. That's ridiculous.
You and I are now eye to eye, because I want to like you. Look at me and tell me guns were the factor in the hunting of our kids in this school this week. And look at me and tell me you accept it and you will work with us to do something about guns.
Okay, and then Rubio answers by saying, of course, guns were a factor, but they were not the deciding factor, which of course is true. That, of course, is true. And there's a fantastic thread on Twitter that an actual scholar has written about what exactly it is that mass shooters have in common. And bottom line is it is a large variety of factors. It is not one thing, it is many things. But we can't handle that in the United States, so it always has to come down to one thing. And of course, Marco Rubio has to be browbeaten for being a Second Amendment advocate. It gets even worse than that. Okay, so watch this. This is the clip that is going to be played over and over and over by Second Amendment advocates. You understand, if you are an advocate for gun control, the worst thing you can do right now, in a time when everyone is on the same side regarding the horrors that just happened, the worst thing you can do is claim that those of us who disagree with you are evil and nasty. You're seeing movement. You are. I mean, just a bit of political advice. You are seeing movement from people on the pro-gun side saying we'd be willing to look at certain gun control measures we may not have been willing to look at before. I may not agree with that policy decision on their part, but that is what is happening in real time. Instead of you embracing that, instead of you saying, you obviously want to come to the table, let's see if there are places where we can agree, instead of us all coming to the table on issues that may not have to do with confiscating weaponry, but instead may have to do with securing schools, on those issues, instead of you doing that, you are overtly alienating people who disagree